I use they, them pronouns. I'm one of the hosts here at Massy Art Space. I'm here to introduce our event tonight. Have a couple notes for y'all, and then we'll get started. Sound good? Yeah. Cool. Who here's been here before? Okay, a couple. Welcome back. For those of you that haven't been here before, Massy Art Society, where we are, is an Indigenous-owned and led arts, nonprofit art space. Our mandate, part of what the aim of this space is to uplift marginalized, underrepresented, over-excluded is the term we use, and Indigenous creatives. We are displaying some artwork on our walls and in our windows, as you can see. Our exhibition changeover is in about a week. Pretty cool right now. Will be cool then as well. Come on back to check it out. And we host literary events like this a couple times a week. I'm here a couple times a week. So, with that, in being in the space and administering the space, I want to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral, unceded, stolen, and occupied territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We're actually just a matter of minutes, a short walk from Kimilai, which is a Squamish word. It means place of many maple trees. It was a maple harvesting village. I don't have the authority to speak on it further, but I do encourage you to research that space, because we are here tonight, and the spaces that you live and work in as well, if you're not so familiar with what they were called before the settler language took them over. With that, I also want to talk about my intentions in having this land acknowledgement and conducting this space as we're holding it tonight. I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I came up in university around the time that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was happening, and so you started to see a lot more land acknowledgements. I think they've been much more common in the last 10 years or so. And what troubles me a lot is that they can be footnotes to events. A lot of folks conduct them in a way to sort of write them off, and I really don't want to do that. But again, I can only speak from my own positionality tonight. So, as a settler on this land, fundamentally, I want to be accountable to what acknowledging the land means. And so, for me, that looks like trying to have better relationships with the Indigenous nations that exist on this land and their peoples. And their kin, and that can be very complicated, and I'm still learning how to do that, aside from my friendships, of course, and that's a part of Land Back, is supporting my Indigenous friends. As well as that, it's looking like reparative work, and as my mother says, if you need something, say it with cash. That's supposed to be a joke, hopefully laugh at that. I'm so funny. But it's important to think about why we are able to be here if we're not Indigenous to this land, how we are existing on it, and what we can do to hopefully mean what we're saying when we're acknowledging the land and putting that into practice. So I'm hoping that tonight this acknowledgement is an opportunity for reflection. For those of you, I can't speak again to your positions. And so that you can come away and think about, okay, well, what does it mean for me to be in the space that I'm in? And what can I do to hopefully be in good or better relationship with the people here? So with that, I have a couple of access notes about the space. So we have a single stall bathroom with a guardrail. Unfortunately, we do not have a push button door. If anyone needs any assistance tonight in any way, I'll be behind this desk. My coworker, Dax, in the back, who's filming tonight, is only going to be filming people up here, by the way. Either of us can help you. Feel free to ask. I'm also sure there's some folks here tonight that are willing to help as well. As well as that, we are also in Chinatown and the downtown east side, what's known as the downtown east side. And I want to recognize that there are a lot of folks on the street who are dealing with the conditions of capitalism and colonialism in a very intimate and visceral way that some folks here may not be familiar with if you're not in the neighborhood often. What I ask is that you be respectful of our neighbors if you are a guest here, and also that if you see someone struggling, feel free to ask us for help. So I am naloxone trained and equipped. I have naloxone right behind the desk there. And if you are needing that tonight, or if you're walking home tonight and you see someone needing that and you don't have access to it, feel free to come back and ask. Yeah, it's our position that's what you do to be a good neighbor. If you have any other questions for me tonight about anything I've said or any commentary you'd like to offer, you can speak to me or we have a feedback form. Yeah, otherwise I'll be back there and I'd like to have our host come up and start the event for us tonight. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for making it down here on this beautiful September evening. I too would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. It means a lot to be able to work, play, and live here. I am still processing what it means to be a settler. And I feel often that, it's 2 steps forwards and 1 step back sometimes. It's an ongoing evolution for personally and also to make proper amends. I am Wiley Wei-Chiun Ho, and I'm a writer, and I'm really pleased this evening to be in conversation with Wayne Ng, who many of you already know is a fun-loving guy. But according to his bio, and I'm just going to read it, he was born in downtown Toronto to Chinese immigrants who fed him a steady diet of bitter melons and kung fu movies. More on that later. So after 35 plus years as a school social worker in schools primarily, I believe Wayne officially retired earlier this month. Am I allowed to?
Yes, 14 days ago.
14 days ago, there we go. It's, I think, relieved, and now he gets to devote full time to his writing. He loves to write, travel, eat, and play, preferably all at the same time. I think it's a bit of a juggler. The Family Code is Wayne's 3rd book, and for those of you who haven't read it, there is a content warning because it contains domestic violence and sexual violence as well. But I promise you it is both a heartening and hopeful read, as well as very, very real. So perhaps without further ado, we'll get started. And Wayne, would you like to read from the book?
Oh, sure. Is that on the agenda? Okay.
Yeah,
I love surprises. No, you didn't tell me I would be reading, yeah. Okay, yeah, why don't you go for me? So, I know there are a number of other writers here. I don't know how you feel about opening chapters, but for me, it's the hardest chapter to write. You know, you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but we do. And usually when I pick up a book, I look at the cover, I look at the back. I do want to see the synopsis, because if I'm going to give up 12 hours of my life, I want to know what I'm getting into. Like, you don't go to a movie blind, you want to watch the movie trailer, right? And that's just for 2 hours. The third thing I do, which is probably the most important, is I open page 1 and I start reading. So, and I think like a lot of you, there isn't a whole lot of time to make a decision. So I've got to hook the reader pretty quickly. And I feel that those who write literary fiction are at a disadvantage. I mean, you know, this is a family drama, so there's no aliens landing, right? There's no hero's journey, there's no murder mystery going on. It's not a rom-com. So you don't quite know what you're getting into when you're opening up a family drama, because you know there's going to be some interfamilial conflicts, but you don't quite know how it's going to start. You don't know all the elements just yet, and yet I still have to hook you. And that's, I find, from a writer's perspective, a very difficult thing to do with this particular genre. And some of you might feel easy peasy. I love first chapters. I get that out of the way and I move on real quick. I go back to my first chapters, first pages, time and time again to get it right, because I know agents I know publishers, I know you as a reader, you got to be sold on those opening pages. So I'm going to start from page 1 with you. So I'm either going to sell you this book or you're going to walk out on me. All right? So, just take a quick minute to set this up. Chapter 1, page 1, Hannah. I've heard it a million times that even if mothers can't bake fancy cookies worth shit or juggle 40 things at once, they know how to protect their children. That the mother instinct will kick in like a smoke detector when you nod off with a cigarette dangling off your mouth. This is just before you burn down the couch, the whole apartment, and everyone in it. I smashed that smoke detector long ago when I couldn't get it to shut up. The things that come naturally to me are getting by, yes, that's debatable, getting out when the shit's hitting the fan, and getting the first punch in, unless I've been suckered. I'm good at those. References are available upon request. Okay, maybe it was stupid to think my instincts would just come back. I banked on that until they took Faye, for good. She's my eldest kid. Ax, short for Axel, was 7. It was just before Faye's 9th birthday. I shot into Axel's school to take him to visit her. I ditched my cigarette. I could barely catch my breath when I stepped into the hallway, which always had his stinky kindergarten feet smell. The secretary was on a break, leaving Principal Wilbo, I had to stop myself from calling her dildo, to cover the office, which is more like a lottery terminal. People coming and going, no one sticking around unless they're scratching loose tickets saying, "You'd think I'd blow half my check on that lottery shit," but luck had never tapped my shoulder any time else, so I never bothered to play. Now, I would consider rolling the dice, figuratively speaking, if I saw a good score coming. You never know. "I need Axe. I'm taking him out," I said to Dildo. I could feel her judgy eyes, although she denied being like that. They all do. I caught her checking out my tats, my crooked nose, broken by an old hookup, but I got him good. And I'm sure she had something to say about all those store-bought lunches for Axe. "Hannah Belenko, so glad you're here. Just the person who's going to call." She didn't really say it with what you could call authenticity. I could tell she didn't want to deal with me. Fuck, what now? Axel brought a peanut butter sandwich to school. You know we have a strict nut-free policy. Really? That's why you needed to call? Sure you don't just have a thing for a woman who could rough you up and flip you around like a twin mattress? He made his own lunch, so you're gonna nail my son for showing initiative? Most boys his age legit can't pee straight. She phoned for Axe, then lectured me. We want our students to be considerate of one another. Consideration, caring, community, please. Every Catholic school beats you over the head with slogans. They might as well put up a billboard and sell ad space, make some money, some real money for playground equipment. Party right with Bud, light up your world, Budweiser true. Those are real slogans. It's not enough that we cater to a generation of wimps and babies, but you want to make them into rats and snitches too? Most principals can't stand a mouthy mother, so I enjoy grinding them from time to time. The principal sighed. Let's not do this, okay? That was good with me, but I wasn't going to just stand there and do small talk, so I waited in the long corridor lined with kindergarten shoes and Disney and Marvel knapsacks. I'm sure Axe's grade 1 teacher jumped with joy when she heard I was there to pick him up. She held his hand as he skipped along the smooth linoleum floor. She explained that he was revved up because he had been in a personal reflection space for inappropriate language against little Abigail Holzman, who was obviously teacher's pet. He had offered some of his peanut butter sandwich to her. When she saw the offending sandwich, she shrieked, "Peanut butter? He's trying to kill me!" The teacher made me like he just said the N-word, when really, Axel was just legit being nice. That, the teacher said, was when Axel announced in front of the class that Abigail was a dirty whore, and screamed that he didn't do anything wrong. I tried not to laugh. Her knuckles rested on her hips. I explained to Axel that nuts could make Abigail sick or even die. It wasn't until I said it was like kryptonite that he seemed to understand. But I really need you to monitor his bag and reinforce the importance of respecting our nut-free school. Axe, you little shit, really? You said that? The principal squirmed at my language. I enjoyed that. Why are you here, Mom? Axe asked. We're gonna see your sister, remember? That's how we get her back, by playing this stupid game. I dragged his lazy butt to the bus stop and lit one of my Indian smokes. I sucked hard, and it irritated my throat, but in a good way. I knew no judge would dare separate me from my children forever. At least that's what I wanted to believe. A couple of days before that, I lost it when I told Kevin that the CES taking Faye wasn't enough for them. They wanted to make her a crown ward, turn her into government property. That would mean if they'd won, I'd lose Faye. Not for 3 months, or even 6 months, but for good. Forever. Kevin, like every guy I'd ever gone out with, zoned out, but Axe's ears the size of a satellite dish. He asked if that meant she was going to be a princess, and if so, he also wanted to be a crown ward so that he could be a prince, better able to guard Faye and me. I'm going to stop that there. Okay. So, it's, like I say, you might be turned off on that, but the hook is the voice. There's no dead body on the floor, no aliens have landed. You either feel, see, and hear Hannah's voice, and you're carried by it, or you're not.
Well, I have to say that I was sucked in. I found it very, difficult in many ways, but I think I was also very, very intrigued by why she was so angry, and what was she going to do about this little kid? But I think I'll just start by asking you, what inspired you to write the family code, this gritty family drama?
There might be a Hannah in this room right now. At the very least, we've all met Hannah somewhere in our life. It could be a neighbor, it could be somebody in our family. The Hannahs would always suck the oxygen out of the room. They come into school exactly like this. They'd be the most difficult clients that I'd have to deal with. It would also be my favorite. They were straight up. They were authentic, they were honest. They had no pretentious airs about them, and I really enjoyed working with them. And I really enjoyed working with the Axels of the world. But they were the most voiceless. Those were the stories that I felt were the most marginalized. And I love to read like the rest of you, and most of the family dramas I read are pretty middle class, white middle class families. This is not a middle class story. This is a family on the margins where every day is just a struggle to survive. And I feel that the Hannahs of the world get dismissed easily because initially they come across as revolting. But there are many layers to them, just like there are many layers to us. So I wanted to tell Hannah's story, and I wanted to pay homage to I've probably worked with over 1,000 families over the course of my career as a social worker. And how do I say this? I think it was Mark Twain who said, write what you know, and Ken Kesey said, write what you don't know. So I came up with a new phrase, write what you feel. So I feel for the Hannahs, and I've felt for them many, many times. And there are times as a social worker, I'd have a session with them, and it's hard to believe that I got paid for sitting in on the privilege of hearing their story, of them trusting me, and of bearing their soul. And I would be sorry that the session would end, and I'd be especially sorry that I couldn't make meaningful change in their life. Because as a social worker and as a therapist, and I know there's another social worker in this room, you can only move the needle incrementally. But sometimes that felt great, and I wanted, like I said, I was moved so many times, and I wanted to put that on paper, and I wanted to honor their stories and their trust, and it was an opportunity for me to sort of close the loop on a fantastic career where I felt I had made a difference. And I wanted to give something back to the people who helped me become the person that I am. So it's kind of a long answer to why I wrote it. But
yeah, thank you. I think it rings authentic on so many levels, because I think you have been on the inside of these stories, and like you say, helping as well as being a helpless bystander sometimes. That does come through. I'm very curious as a writer how you wrote this. So this is a dual POV story, not from Hannah's position. It's alternating between Hannah, our protagonist, who starts off the book, and her 7 then 8-year-old son, Axel. And it's very affecting because from chapter to chapter you get the mother's lens on the world, and then next the child's, and it's you know, it's the same thing that's happening to them, but they're looking at it from very different angles. And the child, of course, I just fell in love with him and wanted to protect him, and I have to say it was tough because I, you know, as a mother as well, and having been a single mother, I don't know, I also could feel for Hannah because I feel the guilt, and as well as when you do screw up, you know, the pain of that. But my question was, writing this dual POV, I think it was pretty risky for you because you're not an 8-year-old kid anymore, and you're certainly not a white female single mom.
Yeah.
So I am thinking like, wow, that's a pretty ballsy move. I just wanted to know, like, what did you go through, or how did you land on these POVs, and what challenges did you face trying to like execute this story?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there are many answers to that. First of all, there's one from a craft perspective, and there's one from an ethical perspective. Should I be writing stories outside of my lived experience? I'll tackle the first one from a craft perspective. As a social worker for 30 plus years, as I said, I saw over 1,000 files, clients, kids, families, sorry. I spent a lot of time with children. I spent a lot of time with mothers. And probably 95% of them were white and female, because most of the single family homes were headed by, the single parent homes were headed by females. That's just the reality of people that I saw. And as a social worker, I functioned primarily with females, female colleagues. I worked in education where most of the staff were females. So I had proximity. I think I'm losing my train of thought. I was in their heads, you know, it was easy to access what they're thinking and feeling because their stories, their pain, they stayed with me. And so when the time came to write this, it was during the pandemic. Some of you heard me say last night it was one of the worst years of my life. My mother had died, couldn't get pallbearers for the funeral, George Floyd, anti-Asian hatred, you know, things fell apart at work. I was in a horrible emotional state, personally, but it was a fantastic time to write. It was a fantastic time to channel all the pain and the emotional intensity that I had felt for decades into crafting Hannah and Axel, because I knew I had a story about them. I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't have a character yet. I didn't have a plot, but I had a theme. And the themes were the desperation of surviving, the motherhood, how it's almost impossible to be a mother because everybody expects mothers to do everything by themselves, alone. It's so I had themes, I had messages, there are things that I wanted to say. So when it came time to write them, it was actually quite easy because they were in my head. All I had to do was channel 1,000 stories. You know, this isn't based on one woman or one son, one family. It's a composite of many. So it's just a matter of organizing the thoughts and the feelings. So that's the craft side of it. The ethical side of it, writing outside of my own lived experience. There are other writers in here. You know, that's what we do. We make shit up. right? They imagine things. And I think if you stay within your lived lane, we're all writing memoirs and biographies, right? Mine would be very boring, you know. So I think it's necessary and important for us to step outside of our lived experience because it expands our world and it expands your world. But there are parameters to that, and there are guidelines, and there are things that you need to be wary of in doing that. You know, you have to be close to your subject matter. So I was close to Hannah and Axel, you know, physically, mentally, and intellectually. So I think I met that criteria of proximity. Another consideration is conventions and tropes, all right? Did I portray a single female adequately, appropriately, honestly, and with authenticity? You know, or was I reinforcing, you know, stereotypes and tropes? That's really for you to decide, okay? But I think that's the challenge that many of us have when we were outside of our lane. And I'm looking right at Daniel Gothorpe, who wrote Double Karma, and his protagonist is a man from Myanmar. Yeah. So, and I in fact, I didn't so much challenge you, Daniel, but I asked you, like, that was pretty ballsy, Daniel. I don't think you're, you know, Burmese at all. So we never finished our discussion, but I'm going to read your book, and I'm going to hold you to a couple of considerations, including that. And I think you knew you would be challenged on that, and I knew there were things that you need to consider. So I'm hoping that you critically engaged any tropes or conventions, and you didn't repeat and reinforce stereotypes. Because that's something I certainly wasn't trying to do with single white females. And there are other things. Was I glorifying and fetishizing Hannah and Axel's trauma, thereby objectifying them? Again, I think that's for you to decide. You know, like, I don't think I was being voyeuristic. I certainly hope you didn't see it as such, because I wrote it from a very gut and emotional place. They weren't objects to be studied and then put into the story, because I think you can see through that when a writer attempts that. But again, maybe through your own eyes, maybe I didn't pull it off. And you know, I've got a few books under my belt, but I'm still learning as well. And then there's other considerations like integrity. Why was I doing this? You know, what was behind it? You know, like some people do it, you know, for their own pain, for their own glory, or for their own agenda. And yeah, I have my own agenda, but am I prepared to step over other people in order to tell that story? I hope and feel and believe that I was writing from the right place. And I think it also has to be well written. So out of all those things, you know, if you don't negatively reinforce stereotypes and if you don't glorify things, you still have to write it well. Because otherwise, people are going to dismiss it. Like, so that's, so I welcome that question, because, you know, and I think anybody who writes outside of their lived experience, writes outside of their lane, they have to be held accountable to that. And I can't remember who I was talking to last night. We were talking about Arthur Golden, who wrote Memoirs of a Geisha. I love the book. I really did. And it breaks my heart. Well, clearly, he's not Japanese. He studied Japanese art history, and I think he worked in Tokyo a little bit. But if he wrote that today, I mean, like, there would be a reckoning, right? And he wrote that in the 80s? No, I don't think it was that long ago. 90s. Okay, yeah, the book's better than the movie. But, so, anybody tried to do that now, they could. It's harder, because this one bugs me, okay? So there's this writing festival, and the theme of one session is on families, okay? So the three authors, I know who they are, I don't know them personally, I've read their work, and they're great works, but they're white female middle class stories and authors, and like there are so many other stories out there. So I don't think I'm taking the opportunity from another white female voice by writing one in that particular vein. Am I making any sense? Okay. Another long answer.
Well, I think your considered and long answer says to me you really gave it a lot of thought. And when you talk about writing from the right place, I think, you know, your 35 plus years, 1,000 families, I mean, that does show through in your characters who are richly layered. Like they're, you know, Hannah comes across first as being brash and harsh and a little vile, to tell you the truth.
A little?
Yeah, a lot. But then we get to know her story, and then we see, you know, how someone can become that way. And I think the universality there for me is, yeah, I am middle class. Yeah, I am not of that space, but I could be. And I think you show us how we all could be, actually, if we, you know, came from different circumstances, for example, or were disadvantaged for a long time. Yeah, so...
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't come across in the book very well because I think some of it was taken off, but Hannah her parents lived in a gated middle class community in Ottawa. They were actually immigrants, but they worked their way up by working hard as entrepreneurs. So I don't want people to think that abuse, neglect are functions of poverty. You know, abuse and trauma happen everywhere, across all demographics.
Let's go pick up her son.
So I've lost my train of thought. It's okay.
Abuse and trauma.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they don't only belong to the hands of the world.
Yes.
Okay, I've lost my train of thought. It's okay.
By the way, Lillian says bye. She has to go pick up her kid from swimming class.
Okay.
But she's going to reach out. So on the subject of tropes and such, I also grapple with it. I have the luxury, I guess, because right now I'm working in nonfiction, and so you know, I'm able to tell my lived experience. However, I struggle with it because I feel like any angle you give is like insufficient to represent everyone in your community, and so I also grapple with that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I don't think any single story, which is why we need so many stories. We need diversity, we need multiplicity. I wrote an article in WordWorks magazine last year. It's called Writing into the Future, and it's actually available online. It's free if anyone's interested. It's called Writing Beyond the Evolving. Sorry, I forgot what it's called. Evolving the Story of the Immigrant and the Outsider. And in it, I do grapple with, you know, what does it mean to write who is your audience when I write a certain immigrant story? Am I writing to my community? And if so, will they recognize themselves as whole people? And I'm hoping, of course, it's a wider readership. And then if it's a wider readership, do I have to give more context and explanation? And so it is actually a difficult thing to write anyway. So I think the way to move the needle is to give all these characters a full humanity, all the good, the bad, and the ugly, not just the stereotypes, obviously. As well, I think we probably do need to provide context for motivation, like, you know, the things that they say or eat or how they laugh. Well, you know, put it into context perhaps. And then I think it's also necessary to center some of these marginalized voices. So I think those are the ways that we can move beyond just tropes. Because I do think, by the way, I think tropes are also necessary. Because I think it would be really unrealistic to say that, I don't know, a Chinese grandmother, wakes up, eats avocado toast, and goes to a yoga class. I don't think that's going to happen, right? So I think, do you? See, I just accepted it, so we can all do it.
Trope buster, love that. Yeah.
But I think tropes are a way to be they're shortcuts, but I think it's also necessary to go beyond. But I've heard you describe the Bounty Code as an immigrant story. So here it comes. On the surface, it doesn't seem like an immigrant story because they're like second generation Canadians. Did you want to tell us why, elaborate on this?
I was being a bit facetious when I said that.
Okay.
So Hannah was born in Ottawa, but her son was born in Halifax to a Lebanese immigrant. That sort of qualifies it as an immigrant story. But her parents, her dad was a Russian defector. He immigrated to Canada. Mother is German. So, if they were Asian characters, we would call this an immigrant story, right? So technically, is this not an immigrant story? So, Family Code's been reviewed a number of times in literary magazines and in blogs. And, I've had reviews online by readers. Nobody refers it to it as an immigrant story. I just found that curious because they are immigrants or sons of immigrants or a granddaughter of immigrant. And I'm not quite sure what to make of that. And maybe, I don't know where the dividing line is either. When is an immigrant story an immigrant story? And I'm not even that comfortable with the term immigrant story because, like Jim, you brought, Michael O'Dane's book the other week. He's an immigrant. Yeah, but people wouldn't think of him as an immigrant because he probably, I'm guessing, without having read the memoir, he probably didn't have to jump through the same hoops that, my grandfather did, for example. He just didn't have the same barriers, didn't have the systemic, oppressive measures and, institutional racism against him. There wasn't the same sense of alienation. He probably didn't have, the same, there was just, I think you know where I'm going with that, right? So I'm not quite sure where the dividing line is, or if there is.
I'd say, read the book. Read the book. That's the best way to decide.
Yeah.
And I think that's a decision maybe that the reader makes. I think in terms of Danes specifically, it's very much an immigrant story, and the reason I brought that book was to say, he's very clear on going back to the whole country and stuff like that. So it's definitely an aspect of immigration.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So, in a perfect world, I'd like to do away with the whole term immigrant story. I don't know who said there are two types of stories. A man, we can update the pronoun to person goes on a journey and a stranger comes to town. You probably, I don't know who said it, but
Joseph Campbell.
Was it Joseph Campbell? I heard it was Mark Twain, but you don't know what to do. So, so basically it's about somebody leaving, giving up a lot, arriving somewhere, and then trying to adapt to new surroundings. So you merge the two stories together. It sounds like an immigrant story, right? And most immigrant stories have similar elements to, there's commonalities in all stories. It's the search for who you are, where you belong, and where you're going. Doesn't matter whether you're Luke Skywalker, or Jon Snow, or Katniss Everdeen, or Wiley Ho, right? We're all looking for, to figure out who we are, where we belong, and where we're going. So if we did away with the term immigrant story, then we wouldn't have to have this discussion. That question. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but I have to leave, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for coming, Henry.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Grab a butter turn on.
Yes.
Wow. Yes, okay.
Thank you, Sandy.
So I would like to invite you to read a chapter from Axel's point of view, because I think that little guy is pretty cute.
All right. So, you know, it might be easier for me to. Okay. So, chapter 2, as Wiley said, I'm alternating chapters here. You know, first you had Hannah's point of view, now we've got Axel's. Axel! Axel! The teacher yelled at me for daydreaming, except I wasn't really dreaming. I was worried Mom would still be mad at me for saying Kevin had a new car. It's not a real secret. He drives us everywhere. Why is that bad? I fell asleep during math, again in French. Then I got really, really bored when I was supposed to draw a picture of ways we make the planet get hotter. It's summer. It's supposed to get hot, isn't it? So I got up and told the new student he's transgender. Do you know what a transgender is? I don't. He got pretty mad and cried easy. Then at recess, I got Mohammed al-Salam in trouble by pushing him into a girl. I ran off before the teacher saw anything, then grabbed a loose ball and banged it into the parking lot. But then Asi al-Fayed got picked on by grade 3 I don't know. He made Asi cry and fall. Asi is my friend. I wanted to kick that mean boy in the balls, but I took Asi to the office and stayed with him. I held ice to his knee and told him he was the best at basketball and that he would be okay. At the end of the day, I got off the bus and saw Mom with her arms folded and face like she was holding her breath. Her really mad look. My stomach did not feel good. I had to pee. When she's like this, I know I have to be really good or just run somewhere. Except, I am not sure what being really good is, and I cannot go anywhere Mom will not find me. Sometimes I get so scared, I just charge like the Hulk. Except, I am more like the son of Mrs. Hulk. Except, I can also be a Hulk who knows how to answer the phone if Mom is still sleeping. I know how to triple check the doors and windows at night. I never seen Hulk do that. Come on, Axe, I've got something for you. This felt like a trap. It always is when she has kind words but a mad face. I looked to see where I could run. You must be hungry. Mom gave me a hot rod. That made me think it was a false alarm, like the time I pulled the false alarm in the winter and the whole school had to go outside and we saw the fire trucks come. I grabbed the pepperoni stick and ripped it open. Maybe Mom is really in a good mood, I wished, but when I have to pee or poo, even when I didn't eat or drink, something is going on. Mom turned to go home. I looked back at Melina, who I sit beside on the bus. She is the slowest runner in the class and the easiest to catch when we play manhunt. She always gets picked last for teams and groups. One time she got laughed at because she stutters. That's when I smacked them and got in trouble. Ever since then, she always shares her lunch and waits for me. She's my best friend. Sometimes when Mom wants to be alone with Kevin, she lets me go to Melina's house by myself. Melina has dolls and stuffies, but they are boring. She also has Mega Blocks. Her mom likes that Melina has a friend. She always makes me fried bologna sandwiches when I come. We sit beside each other on the couch, eating our sandwiches and watching TV. Our favorite shows are Super Monsters and Beat Bears. Melina likes the Beatles, and she got me singing along to them when the Bugs sing. But I still like the Super Monsters more because I want to learn superpowers like them, and if I ever got them, then I could protect her when she sings. One time, I asked if she would be my girlfriend. She said yes, then let me feed her goldfish. I think we're going to get married in Mexico, then go to college. Mom said hello to Melina and her mom. Then she pulled me away. Melina and I waved goodbye to each other. I wanted to follow her to somewhere my stomach would feel better. When we got home, Boris smelled my pepperoni stick and jumped all over me before licking my hands, then my face. He barked, and that made me giggle. Then we wrestled until I forgot I was scared. Garbage bags were all over the floor. Are we moving again? Mom ignored my question and kicked one of the bags. This is garbage? I've been cleaning up. Look, Mom said. Mom only cleans when she's scared, like when the CAS is around. So now the apartment is always clean except for the bags in the middle of the floor. Mom can be really good at cleaning when she wants. She sweeps all the cockroach poo in the kitchen cupboard, all the mice poo from under the sink and in the pantry. She got rid of the thick dark lines around the tub. She even scrubbed Boris's poo and puke out of the carpet and threw out all the takeout food containers that were in a big pile. I looked into the bags. My Spider-Man mask, Optimus Prime, Power Rangers, and all my other toys were inside. This is not garbage. This is mine. Mom sucked on her cigarette. When you ran your mouth about Kevin's new car, do you know what that did? All of a sudden my tummy hurt. She walked back and forth like she was winding up to jump me. You know what that could mean? That could mean Faye's never coming home. You did this. I did not move, not even breathe, not even to blink. You couldn't keep your yap shut, and now she might be gone for good. And whose fault is that? Not mine. I'm the one holding us together. I'm all you have left, and you could be gone too with a mouth like that. Except sometimes Faye had seizures, like when she was really, really thirsty and hungry. Well, those were not my fault. And that time she got lost at the mall, when she and Kevin were buying bras, that was not my fault either. I could not feel my feet holding my body to the floor anymore. It was like I was inside a balloon, floating away, but looking down at myself. I could hear Mom yell, but it sounded like she was in a bubble, far away. Then I heard the voice in my head that comes ever since they took me and Faye away. Boy, are you gonna get whooped. Just shut up and say nothing. Axe! She pushed her cigarette into the Red Bull can. I see I've spoiled you. You have everything, but I have shit. So we're gonna get generous. All your toys, your Legos, your Transformers, your Beyblades, your Airhog, your stupid Spider-Man watch, everything is going to someone who knows how to keep their mouth shut. Someone who knows that there are people who want to take them away forever, people who don't give a shit about them, who want nothing more than to use them for a monthly check. That would be all the kids at the CAS. She grabbed some twist ties. Actually, it's garbage day. Let's just throw this shit out. But wait, you can keep this as a reminder. She handed me the dolphin, the one that Faye left behind. My favorite stuffed animal. His head was ripped off and split open. From high above the balloon, I watched Mom carry all my toys to the street. Boris licked my fingers, but I only knew because I looked down and saw his pink tongue curling. I could not feel anything. The TV was on, but I don't think it was in English anymore. I was stuck in that giant balloon, trapped, but safe enough not to be heard, and slowly running out of air. It's time to leave. Get out now. Then I could feel Mom's hot cigarette breath when she got in my face. Take Boris out right now for a walk before he shits in the house again. I peed in my shorts. She laughed at me, but not like it was funny. Well, you can sit in that for a while. I'm not changing you. Take Boris out first, then clean your own mess. Fucking little baby. And try not to talk to anybody. Can you do that? She threw Boris's leash at me. I followed Boris along the street. I didn't even feel the wet stickiness of my pee down my leg. And I did not care that Melina and her mom said hello and kept calling my name. They asked if everything was all right. I think they saw the wet spot on my shorts. I turned up another street where Boris, even though he's a small dog, let go a steaming pile of poo. I left it there and followed after kicking up some grass to try and cover it up. We kept moving and turned left. Then I unclipped him and jumped the chain link fence into the Islamic school. Boris whined when he saw me climbing, but when I got to the other side, he wagged his tail and squeezed through a hole in the fence. I stepped around the smashed beer bottles and saw that someone had painted
"Die, bombers, die," on the wall by the playground. I kept going through the yard to the tiny park where Boris sniffed a broken, slimy balloon. I sat on the grass under a tree and tied Boris's leash to my leg and took a break. A mom helped her kids up the slide. One time I walked here with Melina and sat on the swings. She pointed past the houses and said that rich people live close, and on garbage days they threw out TVs and bicycles and electric fences, fireplaces. She also heard that the Prime Minister's house had 4 floors and that he gave out whole chocolate bars at Halloween. Not the little fun-sized ones, but whole ones. I've never seen that at Halloween and wanted to go there and get some new toys and maybe a Mars bar, even if it wasn't Halloween day. I bet those big houses have big backyards with tree houses and swing sets. I wish we lived in the houses around the park, even if they're not the rich ones. Not only do they have big backyards, the park is right beside them too. I do not know how long I was asleep, but when I woke up under the tree, my chest pounded, like I was chased. I had to get home before Mom found another reason to explode. I cut through someone's backyard and almost stepped on a needle. I hate needles. Mom made me get one to stop diseases and it hurt, so I see why people would throw them away. Soon I was in front of my house. I stared up at the window where Mom would be. I did not want to go in, but Boris pulled me to the backyard and upstairs. Our door was unlocked. I opened it and saw Mom on the floor crying. I pulled her some water and searched for her cigarettes. Mom covered her head with her arms like somebody was going to hit her. "I'm scared, Ax. I'm scared Faye's gone for good." She reached up to me, but it was her cigarette she went for. "My little girl, my little angel's gone." I didn't know what to say. Before, when there wasn't enough money or Mom was sick, I would try and keep her busy by getting her mad or happy. I was used to looking after her, but not while she cried about losing Faye. "Boris and I had a good walk, Mom." I rubbed her back while she cried. "Everything's going to be okay." I wanted to say we'll get Faye back and that everything will be better soon. But I knew not to say anything about Faye, and I really did not know what better looked like. Still, I wondered. By then my pee was dried, but I did not care.
It's heavy. It's heavy.
Thanks. Yeah, it's heavy, but I think that particular chapter shows how, you know, the innocence of a child and so the adultification that happens because of a mother who really can't look after him. She's got so many problems, which makes me want to talk about this theme that's recurring of, you know, intergenerational trauma and the cycle of violence. I mean, over and over again we see like power and powerlessness that begins with, I think, Hannah's father's story, who I believe he fought in the war and the trauma from war, how that played out in his own life and how he shut down. And that in turn sort of just perpetuated through the generations. So I guess I want to ask you for some insight, without giving too much away, but what do you think is the disruptor to this cycle of violence? Or what brings Hannah and other people out of this terrible cycle?
Well, I don't think there's any one answer to breaking the cycle and righting what always appears to be a sinking ship. You know, and if it almost looks like it's hopeless for Hannah, because her life is a shit show, right? Like, she makes bad choices. She's always getting herself into trouble. She's constantly scraping rock bottom. But the word hope is repeated 38 times in the novel. It's also the very last word in the novel. Hope is both a conscious and subconscious element in the book and in Hannah's life, and in Axel's life. They dream but they dream differently than we do. You know, like, she doesn't dream about Axel going to university, she just dreams about getting through the day. They live one day at a time, and that's their hope. I mean, she does have some crazy schemes to get rich, but that's no different than the long lineup at the lottery terminal, right? You know, and those people have hope, you know, even though it seems misguided. But in working with the Hannahs and the Axel, the most important thing that I can give them is the knowledge and the belief and the understanding and the truth that they don't have to be alone. You know, raising a child, just existing, is so hard. We need people, right? We're social beings, and when we grapple with systems against us, when we grapple with mental health, we retreat. We retreat into our own world, into our own systems. We cut ourselves off. So Hannah's really good at that. And unfortunately, that's the worst thing that she can do. So when I'm sitting across with Hannah in a session or with Axel, it's a constant reminder that I'm there for them, that there are other people there for them, there's services in the community, there's people who are there to be part of their community, to be part of their network, because we're trying to acknowledge, we're trying to impress upon them that we understand that it's hard and you can't do this alone, and that there are systems, services, and supports out there to help them, because it really is about community. Every one of us belongs to certain communities, you know, multiple communities. The more the better, the richer the better. The Hannahs and the Axels, they don't know how to use community. They don't know how to use people very well, and that was a big part of what I did every day. Did you try going there? Did you talk to them? Did you use that? So, you know, but it was a hard lesson for Hannah to figure out, and I think, I don't want to give anything away either, but once she realized that she wasn't alone, the opportunity to change the game was there for her. Whether she exercised that or not, well, you just have to buy the book, right?
So on that idea of the next book, your next book is Johnny Delivers, which is a sequel to Letters from Johnny, which, by the way, was an Ottawa Book Award finalist and 2022 winner, yeah, hold it up, of Best Crime Novella from Crime Writers of Canada. So for the family code, I think there was a sense of resolution by the end, but there were also a few loose threads.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, are you planning a sequel?
To the family code? It's interesting because I've had a number of people ask me that. It's always great when you leave people panting for more. And I think I did that. I don't know if you feel that, Wiley.
Yeah, I actually flipped the page a couple times and thought, oh, I'm missing a chapter.
Yeah. Well, I think good writing is to not spend a lot of time after the resolution. Yeah. So like, you've made your point, the story is arced, let's draw this out. And that's what I did, and I left people hanging, and I left people asking, so whatever became of so-and-so? What happened with so-and-so? You know, did she get together with Jimmy? What about Faye? So there are no plans for sequel in the works. That's a long answer to your question. But I didn't think there would be a sequel to Letters from Johnny either. So that's book 4. And then I have book 5 already drafted. So I have, you know, if this does well, if there's interest, then if I feel it here, then maybe I'll do it. But, you know, some people wanted me to do a sequel to my first book. I didn't feel it in my gut. It just didn't move me. So, you know, people have heard me say I write from the gut. A lot is dependent on how I'm feeling, what theme's going to draw out of that. I'm just not feeling it right now. A lot of other things on the go.
Right. Well, you've had a busy month
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah.
So Wayne is the writer in residence this month at Joy Kogawa House, and I think I hope everyone will stay. They're wonderful baked goodies. Kara, this is a community event because the baked goodies are courtesy of Cinda Yeasting, who is an ACWW member as well as a local baker, and her Her, is it triple ginger cookies are amazing.
Double spiced ginger.
Double
And
spiced
I've never seen anybody do this, but she puts candied ginger on top. And the butter tarts are to die for. We especially requested them.
Okay. So why butter tarts? Can you explain?
Because they were Axel's favorite treat in Family Cove.
So everyone must have one.
Yeah, you've got to try it. I don't think he had these, but he loved them nevertheless.